Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SEO Fight Club. I'm just saying hello in chat and telling people to ask questions today. So we are doing a Q&A, but we'll probably just talk about the news of the day until we get a good backlog of questions going. So with that, I'll let Lee pick the first topic while I finish popping out.
Oh, I love this one because there was a couple of pieces that popped up this last week that I found to be really, really interesting. The first one came from my wife, Honey, who was looking in some of the SEO groups, and apparently Astra made a change to their base theme where they automatically link all posts to an author page. And that ticked off a lot of SEOs because that means all of that link juice is flowing to a page that you're not really trying to rank, generally speaking, not really trying to rank the author page most of the time. And you can't turn it off. You know, it's one of those things that's just now baked into the theme. And so people started wondering, okay, if I just switch themes, that'll solve the problem. Well, she had done some testing on this. You want to talk about that one, Honey? No, she had done some testing on this particular thing. She had switched themes on a site that she had ranking, and it took 7 months to recover. She didn't do anything else to it other than just switch themes, because sometimes when you switch themes, the themes that you're using have SEO and other things baked into them. But then Carolyn pointed out before we got on air here, an article that Google sent out said, hey, when you change, the HTML and CSS of your pages in a big way, it can cause your rankings and indexation to go haywire, which is consistent with what we've seen tested in the field.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate way to trigger a Google dance, because most people's web pages are like 5% content and 95% inline style sheets and JavaScript. And so if the theme is the bulk of your text, and if you have a theme that's like a 1 megabyte download, that's like half the size of a city phone book in just like code crap. And so when you change that amount, you're going to trigger a Google dance.
Yeah, changing 98% of your page site-wide all at once is going to be a problem for Google.
Yeah. And we see that in SEO with much less. When you just, aggressively tune the main content, that's a much smaller operation than actually switching the theme.
Right. So I think it's an interesting one, for people. And I think there's going to be more testing that's being set up and done to see, if you just have some pages ranking and you just switch the theme on a site, what happens to traffic and, how long does it happen? And there's a lot of factors that'll go into that. Like I said, a lot of the themes, they have different sizes, they have different SEO capabilities baked in. So all of those are going to come into play. But I think it'll be an interesting series of tests to see, hey, if all you did was switch theme and nothing else, like no attempt to recover or mitigate the stuff, how long does it take to recover? Or does it recover?
Yeah, I think that kind of testing is awesome. I'm surprised we haven't got to it before now, but better late than never.
Exactly.
And speaking of testing, like I've kicked off a ton of new tests. Like my year of reverse engineering Googlebot, it's yielding just tremendous insights. And so I'm retesting time exploit.
Nice.
And so and the interesting thing is I have somebody I'm working with who's helping me like figure a lot of this stuff out, another engineer. And he found this research on people doing web service engineering that's fairly recent. and it stumbled across a lot of like the configuration and time constraints and everything that Googlebot's working with as well from an Ajax and web services standpoint.
Mhm.
And our experiments yielded the same outcomes. We have the exact same point in time where Google stops looking at the page. Like it's awesome when you find somebody else's independent research and then all of a sudden like it confirms everything you've been working with for like 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, now I just want to repeat like all of the primary components. And yeah, so it's kind of a confluence of a number of topics because it's also good timing with the Yandex leak. And I see that we have a question there too. And a lot of people are like, Ted, is this going to mean a lot of new factors? And I'm going slowly through the list. There's a lot to unpack, but my instincts are telling me no. There's not going to be a lot of new factors because from what I've seen of the list so far, we've got it all covered on stuff that's actionable. We just discovered it a different way. It's like we didn't even need the leak.
Mhm.
There's a they use a different algorithm for TF IDF, but so what? The principle's the same. We are telling you to put in more keywords, put in more relevant words like entities. And, it turns out that, all of the stuff we have been testing, the results we had been finding, they're kind of being confirmed by this Yandex data. This is kind of how search engines do it, to minimize cost. And the Yandex list is interesting for a couple of reasons. Like, first and foremost, it's not Google, and that's going to be their defense. But at the same time, they don't have the budget of Google. They
Mhm.
really have to minimize costs and make everything stretch. And so in a lot of ways, a lot of the things they're going to do to not have huge expenditure, Google's going to have to do to be able to afford scale. And so there's probably going to be like a good amount of agreement between what Google's doing and what appears on this Yandex list from those engineering principles of how do we scale and how do we keep it cheap. The other thing about the list I noticed was that once you eliminate all the factors that would be tiebreakers in terms of their significance, and once you eliminate all the factors that are kind of like curation for inclusion in some sort of a category search, and then somebody pointed out that there's an awful lot of penalty style factors. So when you remove the penalty style factors, there's not a lot left over. And so when you get to that list of what's left over, it's kind of the stuff we've discovered in testing, the stuff that we've measured in the search results and we correlated with rankings. It may not be the exact algorithm name, but the principle of what you're adding and how and when and how much, like, all of those things, we got the leak years in advance from testing. We didn't need the leak.
Right.
And so it's so far it's been a confirming signal more than a lot of new discoveries. So what I haven't seen, and if you see something in there that you really think I ought to take a close look at, what I haven't seen and I'm looking for is some fundamental force we haven't thought to work with. So It's not about, oh, but did you specifically use this relevancy algorithm? No, but we've been doing relevancy tuning since the beginning. It doesn't matter which algorithm they're using, and they could change that tomorrow, but they're still going to want relevancy. So yeah, if you see something in there that's a new fundamental force that SEOs haven't been working with, well, that's an interesting one. I'm really interested in those. I'm not so interested that Yandex used this algorithm instead of TF-IDF. That's less novel to me. What do you think, Lee?
Well, I think, it's true. I saw, and I don't know whether this is true or not. Somebody had reported that, the Yandex search results and Google search results like correlated a 0.7, which is not surprising. Bing search results correlate highly too. There's differences in there, but largely, the best sites are going to be the best sites, and the best sites come up because they've got the keywords in there. They've got, other things. They've got links, all of these just fundamental forces that we've now broken down, like Quora, in just thousands of different ways, to look and see, all right, does it count more here, more there, all of those sort of things. So fundamentally, evaluating what a page is about is very basic, at its root. And so the way that Yandex ranks the factors, weights the factors differently than Bing, differently than Google, largely they're going to, tell you the similar stories. They're going to tell you, hey, keywords matter, your title tag matters, all of these things matter. They just matter a little differently depending on what data you're collecting and all those sort of things. But fundamentally, it's all the same story.
Yeah, and that's the other interesting part is it really highlights that, all of the functional, things we could think of for the algorithm are kind of represented in the Yandex list, but what's really missing is the amount of weight that's being applied to them. And so it's almost as if it's more important to understand the relative weighting of the factors than it is to have the complete list or to know what all the factors are. It's almost like the weightings of what to work with is almost more important than the list of what you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing that's missing from the Yandex data is I don't think it speaks to the relative weighting. They talk about the factors, but they don't say, which punishment factors are severe and which ones are mild. And knowing that, I mean, geez. And, another standout thing is all of those punishment factors, they did create a problem for themselves because those are going to be the things that get weaponized. And so they basically gave an arms dealer supply list to all the negative SEO practitioners for their search engine. And if Google's using any of those as negative factors, then, that's equally bad. So, probably the thing that the search engines have to fix quickly are any of those negative factors that can be weaponized. And Google probably has to figure out if anything on that list is something they're weaponizing too, because now it's going to be very likely that negative SEOs work with it. So if you want to test to find something that's going to make headlines, you test those negative factors and see which ones can demote something, whether it's on Yandex and or Google. And that would probably make headlines in a hurry. You'd become a famous SEO for doing those discoveries from the list. And so hopefully Yandex and Google have reviewed the negative things they have in common and they've mitigated those, because if they haven't, There's going to be a surge in reputation management businesses.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, what do you think about that? The hazards of a leak like this? What do you think the threats are?
I don't really think there's a hazard there. I mean, everybody's looking at this like, oh man, there's some discoveries in there, but conceptually, there's not a lot new that and I didn't spend a long time with this. I went down, started scanning down through the list, and I'm like, yeah, this all looks pretty standard. And then I walked away from it because I knew everybody would be doing the deep dive into this particular realm. But there was nothing there. It's like, yeah, there's signals and there's factors and there's some negative things in there, but you expected that. And like you said, there's nothing there that came out as a new factor, like number of vowels or something in the text. You're like, wow, I never knew that they cared so much about vowels. There's nothing new that's popping out of that. So I don't think, and the weights aren't there, so you cannot tune. Just because I know all the factors doesn't tell me how exactly to balance those out to get the optimal score. And it's Yandex, not Google. So I mean, there's a lot of pieces there that are not particularly helpful.
Yeah, like if they would have had a factor that said, the number of sentences containing dates, statistics, or numerical quantities, that's a factor. Something related to how many claims of informational statements does a web page have. Something like that would be like something new, because we've never thought about, oh well, we need sentences that have informational payload. We've always been telling ourselves we need quality sentences that are readable.
Mhm.
And Google's been saying helpful, helpful, but what does that mean? And if there was something in there that explained a mystery and was something that SEOs typically never work with, I mean, that would be interesting. So by all means, if you think you found a smoking gun like that, let us know in the comments, because we will get through the whole list. But it's slow going. It's a lot of them, and it's cryptic, and we're largely guessing at what they meant by what they named it and how they tagged it.
Mhm.
uh, and most of the descriptions were in Russian, and I have a translated copy of it. um, and I'm glad it's just a list of factors and not source code. They might have leaked source code too, but I don't want to see source code. um, and I think the takeaway from this, the thing that I find really interesting, and I hope Google notices too, is that you can have an open algorithm. Like, you can share the factors because we already know them from testing. Like, they revealed almost nothing by confirming what the factors are, but there's still enough mystery in not knowing how they're weighted that you could have, trust and transparency with the public and help establish that it is a level playing field, but you can still have unknown coefficients for weighting them, or dynamic weighting using rank brain to say that it's still going to be a mystery about which ones do the trick or what combinations do the trick. Um, and so, yeah, I've always thought they should have made the algorithm open, because a ton of their trust issues would go away.
The other thing is, like you'd pointed out, you're kind of guessing at what the factors are. So if there were a factor there called quality signals, you're like, okay, they've got quality signals. Now, what are they? We don't know. It's the same thing. You have within the factors, there are multiple data elements typically that go into an algorithm of this scale or of Google's scale. So you're still not going to know, even if you can see the whole thing. You're
Yeah.
still guessing about what's in there, and it changes as they find, as it evolves, and you find that hey, you know what? The number of vowels is a trust factor. More vowels is higher trust, so we're going to incorporate that into our trust factor. And then that changes weights across the web, and it makes it a little bit better theoretically, and all those sort of things. We don't know. It's all a guessing game, even if you can see what all the factors are, because you don't know what goes in them.
Well, you gotta value extra vowels because you have to buy an extra vowel.
Here we go.
All right, let's take a look at another topic here. So Astra had been a nightmare, so we kind of got that. Switching to bricks or oxygen has been a good move. So there's a suggestion from the audience. Talked about Yandex. Let's see. How would you transition a local business from ranking their homepage to inner pages instead? And this is a very common problem. What you get is like a law firm, and they're so aggressive, they do all their SEO on the homepage. So they rank their homepage for like 39 different high competition keywords. And they don't do half bad at it. When you spend good money after good money after good money on doing that all on one page, you basically end up with 36 high competition keywords that are middle of page 2, top of page 3. And the problem when you get dialed into that type of scenario is that when you make the push to take one of those high value keywords and drive it to the top of page 1, you decimate all your other rankings. So to rank one well, you will destroy 36 other ones that are keeping your business alive. And we call that over leveraging the homepage. And it's a big problem. And it locks SEOs out of the best keywords. So now you get into the situation, the homepage is sacred. We can't disrupt the organic revenue, and all the important keywords are locked there. So find other keywords and work with those on inner pages. Great. That's not a good scenario. You've effectively locked yourself out of SEO. You're outside the house, you locked your keys on the inside, and that's your SEO plan. What do you do for this stuff, Lee?
I'm going to take an entirely different tack to this, because I've had this question asked before, and I typically respond first with, why do you care? Because you can build a site, a local site that's got all of your internal service pages, 2,000 words of content, well optimized, well tuned. Your homepage is like 400 words. It basically says, hey, welcome to Lee's Roofing. We do shingle roofing estimates, blah, blah, these sort of things. And it basically directs you to those pages. And there are times when Google's algorithm will sit there and you're looking for, ceramic shingles, and they'll say, oh, you're looking for a roofer. And they'll show the homepage, even though the homepage just mentions, the ceramic shingles, and, the internal page is much better optimized for it. Google's algorithm is making that determination. So, I don't fight it. I have the homepage is just designed typically on my sites to, direct you to the internal services. But sometimes Google just decides, hey, we're going to rank that damn homepage. And everybody's like, well, how do you get the internal page to rank? I'm like, you don't. If Google's algorithm is pointing in that direction, you can't change that. Sometimes it'll do, service pages. Sometimes it'll do the homepage, in those situations. Aside from the stuff that you'd mentioned earlier about bad SEO, even with optimal SEO, Google can ignore your wishes, but you're ranking. So again, why do you care? As long as you're showing up there and you're getting that click.
Well, the reason I think a lot of SEOs end up caring is they want to take one of the keywords that's on the homepage list and they want to drive it to the top of page 1. And if it was on an internal page, they'd have the freedom to do that. And so, Yeah, I think what they want to do is they want to have a path to take all those terms and rank top of page one for them.
And I think
And
you can, but a lot of times, if I'm doing, like, if I'm a plumber and I have a leak detection page and you search for leak detection, sometimes it'll show the homepage, even though all the homepage does is say, hey, we do leak detection, click here to do it. That's Google's decision about which page to show. And what I find is that most of the time, they've promised their clients will get this page to the top of the SERPs, and Google's algorithm sometimes doesn't cooperate with your plan.
yeah, I can get that if you have an inner page that's aggressively tuned for the keyword, then your answer is okay.
Mhm.
But when it's just on the home page and you can't aggressively tune the home page and there's no internal page for the term, then I think it's a lot more difficult than that.
Yeah, I agree with you. The concept of let's tune, the homepage for 50 different terms well is not going to happen. But
Yeah,
if you've left the homepage just basically as a gateway to all your other pages and it's still ranking there, I mean, that's sometimes Google just does that.
I agree. I'd make an internal page and I'd do the aggressive tuning for page one there. And like you said, if it didn't work out or if it just made the homepage rank better, then you're right. That's good enough. Call it a victory.
Mhm.
But if you're denying yourself to compete aggressively, that's something else because
Yes.
you do have to beat the competition in order to stack rank well. All right, let's see. Where'd we leave off here? Okay, third-party verification of your process is worth a pat on the back. Thank you. Yeah, it pays to test. We've always found that it pays to test. Testing gives you advantage over everyone else because you understand how things work and behave. And yeah, it's total value, and I recommend everybody should test their beliefs, at least their core beliefs. You don't have to test everything, but if you believe something to be true, if you believe keyword density can't possibly ever work, you ought to test that. I'm just saying, because I know if you have that belief, you haven't tested it, but you ought to test it. That's the type of foundational, fundamental force of nature that you should test and verify. And
Ted,
you can, yep,
can I actually add something here? I have a
sure.
question related exactly to that. If you know what to test, like obviously that's really good. Like I agree with you. I'm learning now to test stuff and yeah. But what if you have to test something? Okay, no, wait. So you are ranking a page, but somehow the competitor is ranking better than you. But you don't know how is he doing it. You don't know what to test. How do you discover how the competitor is doing it, or some
Well,
secrets or something?
you have to separate the two situations because the there's a difference between understanding if keyword density has any positive effects at all versus what do I test to outrank everyone else. That's one
Mhm.
is a different problem that isn't really an isolated test. One is a combination of everything you know to be true and how well does it stack up to the outcome you're hoping to get. Whereas the other one, we're isolating keyword density, and all we want to see is out of 10 different tests, how many of them improved ranking when we aggressively tuned for density. And so we're
I
not
see.
looking to be number one, we're looking of 10, how many moved up when we did this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay, okay.
and so what we get from that is that we learn that, oh, this piece of the puzzle is tends to be a beneficial piece of the puzzle. Maybe it's beneficial 80% of the time, but something that's going to help you rank 80% of the time is something I'm going to do all the time.
Yeah.
So you learn a piece of what you need to outrank other people. Now, ultimately, there's going to be a blend of things you need to outrank all your competitors, and that blend is going to change from keyword to keyword. So the winning formula to get number one in Google is going to be different for the keyword games than it is for used sofas. They're just going to have different amounts of different components of ranking. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I think, if I'm looking at a situation, I'm looking at my competitors outranking me, and I notice, he's got more images than I have, or, he's got site-wide footer links, or he's got forum profile, backlinks and things like that. Each one of those is a separate test that I can run to see if those work. And, after you start to do this long enough, you start to pick up, as Ted said, these are the bigger levers. They work, 80% of the time, and you kind of can, recognize that. And some of the other stuff becomes lower powered factors that you learn to recognize and say, oh, he's got more images, I'll put more images in. But there are even ways to do that. Like with image tests, you can put blank images on a page. Just if that's the number of images, you can add it real quick and see over the next couple of days, after you get your page recrawled, does it move up? Does it move down? If it doesn't move, then that's probably not it. Does that make sense, Gabriel?
Yeah, totally.
It's little simple things like that you can do, and you can try. You just come up with a theory, run with it and see, or you can go to, sort of the laboratory and formally test. I've got 10 pages, they've got images, one image up to 10 images, and just see if they rank order in that particular,
Mm-hmm.
if they rank based on number of images.
Yep.
So we have a good one here. It says, I am into travel website. One site targeted at 85 cities brings 15,000 clicks and some revenue. Created another that was also successful, both supported by expired domains. Yes, those can work. Each with 200,000 pages. Now I'm creating 200 sites to cover more cities built on a new domain. Should I interlink them? 325,000 pages per city. Can't have expired domain for all. I have 2 companies. Well, big authority websites have natural advantage. They have this internal page rank that just kind of makes them work easier. The difficult part of doing that is getting Google to index your thousands upon thousands of pages. That's the hard part. So yes, gigantic authority sites have extra firepower, and yes, they're harder to make work. Should you interlink them? When I was in e-com, the stores had about 500 categories, and at the low season, 25,000 SKUs each. And so that's a pretty big Cartesian. We'd averaged about 16 store categories per product. And you probably wonder, well, how does that work? Well, there's top level jewelry, there's jewelry silver, there's jewelry amethyst, there's jewelry fair trade, there's discount jewelry, there's on sale, there's, and so by the time you get through a full enterprise organization, you're probably putting each product in about 16 categories. So if you think about that Cartesian, that's a lot. And then these sites also add blogs that add, usually between 75,000 and 200,000 posts built up over 10 years. And yeah, we cross-linked the hell out of those. Every one of them linked to every other one of them. We cross-linked every which way because it was a network. Go to CNN, look at their footer, and tell me they don't cross-link. Go to Viacom. They own like 50 cable channels like Nickelodeon and MTV. Tell me they don't cross-link anywhere in their network. If you go look at Gap, Old Navy, Banana Republic. They cross-link right up at the top of the page. There's a ton of major brands that have multiple brands and they cross-link. And there's a disclosure statement that should make it white hat, because if Google wants to outlaw disclosing who is responsible for content, that is a drastic departure from their guidelines. And so those disclosure statements generally read, this site also owns and operates the Pots and Pans store, the Seattle Plumbers Club, Discount Golf, and Movie Tickets R Us. And those sites have nothing to do with each other, and you can cross-link them in disclosure statements. And so that's just how it works. There's a million examples of it. What do you think, Lee?
I agree. And, the other thing is, if you've got some mass page builders, you can, just build some pages in a different niche, 50 to 100, 2 or 3 of them, and let them sit for, a few weeks and then interlink them and see what happens, because it's when you have sites as large as he's talking about with hundreds of thousands of pages, you start to cross-link all of those. If it's not working properly, undoing it is hard, because you're talking about scale.
Yeah, and you want to know something funny about that whole type of large e-com ecosystem? You know what products always sold best? Whichever ones we were promoting. It's whatever we were promoting that day sold best. So you can have these huge, massive websites, and still at the end of the day, the things you do active marketing on are going to be the things that you sell through the quickest. And occasionally you might sell something else that'll just kind of go viral and spin off, but that's not the rule, that's the exception.
Right.
And so, yeah, we always tried to predict the run rates on products, and it all ended up being bullshit because the things that sold were the things that were on the marketing calendar to be promoted.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you can rank stuff, but if you want to get your best outcome selling and converting, you really need to do sound marketing principles.
Yeah, it's consistent with my history. When I worked at a company, we were really, really good at telling you the number of orders that were going to come in. What I couldn't tell you was which products. I could tell you, we're going to get 1,000, are going to come in, but how those 1,000 going to break down, it was guesswork. It was, educated guesswork, but always wrong.
Yeah, because you get an idea of how many orders you can actually fulfill at Christmas. Like, that's a number that's hard to beat after you've done it for 10 years. And you need to reinvent the system to really make big improvements. You got to rebuild the whole fulfillment line. You need, packaging automation and clever solutions, and you take your popular promoted items and you put them by the pack line so you don't have to walk across the warehouse to grab popular things. It's very hard to change the number of things you sell at a certain point. And so, like Lee said, you can kind of guess what the revenue and the order counts are going to be. But in terms of picking what the actual things were that sold, that's going to come down to what you went deep on in inventory and how low you're willing to cut the price and how much attention you're going to give that on the promotional calendar. And yeah, those things all matter.
I mean, how many times back in your ecom career did you find yourself after the holiday season going, unicorn bracelets? Who knew?
Yeah, the company was built on weird discoveries. I'd say all of the products that just, went to the moon, yeah, a product buyer saw something in it, but nobody knew it was going to pop the way it did. Like at one point, it was those little silicone support bracelets for like breast cancer awareness, and you could get a 10-pack of bracelets or 200-pack for a fundraiser. Who knew? And then just as quickly as that trend came in, it left. Like nobody wanted to do silicone bracelets anymore, and we were sitting on 250,000 units, and they're now out of fashion. And so, yeah, you can't predict when they stop being popular either. That's hard to do. Let's see. Let's go to another question here. I've started a niche site. It's 3 months old. I'm looking to buy some press release links. Should I take links for the homepage only or for the inner page? I usually do inner pages myself. I figure naturally the homepage gets backlinks. Like that's what homepages do. That's what they're designed for. Every website that's out there describing other websites is most commonly going to link to a homepage. So boost the inner pages every chance you get. Make sure that your press release is relevant to the target keyword of the inner page. You probably want to use a variation for the anchor text. But you don't want it to rank. And there's this common thing I hear where SEOs get pissed off at press releases because they can't find them in search. And you don't want to find them in search. They're duplicate content. They shouldn't be in search. They'll appear once or twice, and then the rest of the links get filtered out. And you know what? If they appear on page 7, great. Out of sight, out of mind. That's where authority backlinks should be. Because you don't want to compete with it, and you don't want your competitors going, oh, they got a press release. That reminds me, I should do one. Don't send a clue. Any thoughts?
Yeah, generally speaking, for something like that, if you launched a niche site, the first press release I would have put out is, Ted's Unicorn Bracelets just announced the launch of their new website. It's where you can come and get all of your, unicorn bracelets and charms and blah, blah, blah. I would have done the sort of a branded press release to start. And then, yeah, any sort of additional press releases, target the pages you want, category pages or individual product pages or service pages if you're doing, local or something along those lines.
All right, let's see. What is your best link building strategy for a brand new website? Tell you right now, for brand new websites, I've been able to get them to rank #1 on Bing, #1 on Google for medium or less competition keywords, not going after payday loans or anything. But I've been able to get those #1 on Bing, #1 on Google in 3 weeks-ish. And it takes that amount of time because of the off page. It just takes time for Google to discover off page. And I'm a big fan of, get the off page going first and then set up hosting. So it's buy domain, do press release, configure hosting. That's the order. And that's the easiest way to do it. So you press release, a good one's going to cost you a couple $100, and it's going to get you 500 referring domains. And so your cost per backlink at that point is probably not going to get better. If you do guest posting or hire other services, you can expect to pay a lot more. And I think press releases, when they're honest and white hat and on topic, and you're not misleading anyone and you're telling something real, I think it's low risk. You're not doing 12 of them. You're doing, one, every now and again. And usually for most mid-competition keywords, by the time a website has 2 or 3 from different vendors, you're usually outpowering everybody. So you don't need to go nuts. Put them in important places. Be selective.
So we got a question on how many backlinks per press release are okay.
Well, I think it depends on the site. You don't want to do one press release per page. That's usually totally unnecessary. So, if it's like a plumber, odds are one press release will do the trick and 2's going to be overkill. So you can make them really honest. You can space them out. And you don't need to go nuts when you're competing with referring domains. I think the mistake that most SEOs are making is they're competing with backlinks, and don't do that. It's too expensive and it's overkill. Compete with referring domains first, and that's a much smaller number. And if that fails, sure, you can graduate to backlinks. But since I've switched to only dealing with referring domains off page, I've been happy. My minimum viable SEO has been very minimum. I just think it's a great way to go, especially right now.
I have there's a lot of different theories around this. Our practice in using press releases typically is that I'll have one link that is the target anchor that I'm targeting for that particular page, and then I will have one brand link, and that's it. Other people will sit there and say use them. I think the mistake that I see that people use is trying to get a press release to rank multiple pages for multiple things. That is scattered. The shotgun approach doesn't work well.
Yeah, I always do one link in the press release. I don't do any of the map embeds and all the SEO upsells. I don't want any of that stuff. I just want one link in the press release, and it needs to be relevant. And I've been very successful with that, just keeping it minimal. And again, we're not doing 8. It's, half the time or more, it's like one and done. And that's it. Like the site doesn't need any more at that point because it's a 5-page website. It's already cross-linked. So that press release is going to boost everything. So, and your next nearest competitor has 12 referring domains and you just dropped 500. So one and done is usually good enough. Let's see. If you want to rank one page for multiple related keywords, how to choose the primary one. Assuming the choice is not obvious. Well, I think usually the choice is obvious. Like there will be a keyword that stands out. Like I'm selling hummingbird feeders. Obviously, my target keyword is hummingbird feeders. But, we've shown on the show in the past that a web page about hummingbird feeders can rank for 750 different keywords. But it only had to rank for one well. It got the rest for free. And so you can rank for one keyword well, and depending upon what that keyword is, will determine which ones you can get for free. And so I would kind of look at what is the umbrella term for the most keywords that are going to convert for you. And so for hummingbird feeders, that's the umbrella term. And then they pick up blue hummingbird feeders, red hummingbird feeders, glass hummingbird feeders, brass hummingbird feeders. You get them all at that point. And it's a two-phase game. So you don't do it all at once, because you typically confuse the matter early on if you go for keyword reach from the start. Just rank for the target keyword well. And then upon doing that successfully, then you add the keyword reach phase where you just mention the other terms. You're not tuning the page for all of them. You're just mentioning them. And then you pick up the broad match organic traffic. And so the way I want you to think about it is you should have a spreadsheet. And in that spreadsheet should be every canonical URL on your website in the first column. In the second column, you have the best target keyword for each URL. That is your intentional SEO. That's what you'll rank track. That's what you'll run Quora reports for. It's not every keyword you rank for. That's stupid. Don't do it. So your intentional SEO, the work you actually do, is in that column. And what you'll find is that you've been putting multiple keywords on pages. So you'll sometimes have 2, 3, or 24 keywords in that cell. And you'll be able to spot across pages where you're cannibalizing yourself, and it'll be obvious. And then all of the things that didn't make the target keyword list go in the final cell for the URL. And that's going to be the broad match organic reach keywords. And so you just list out all the other keywords that you're going to use to get broad match traffic for a page. And you put them in the best umbrella term you can so that they can succeed the best. And then upon doing that, then, again, minimum viable SEO, you know exactly what keywords you're going to run Quora reports, you're going to run volatility reports, you're going to rank track, and the vast majority of keywords you're not going to do any of that crap for. But if you're one of those people that says, oh, I ranked for 100,000 keywords, so I'm going to take those 100,000 keywords and load them up in my rank tracker and check them every day. And that's a terrible waste of time. All right, I'll stop punishing everyone. All right, so any thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah, the only thing I would be careful of, because I see a lot of people who have a tool religion, where a tool will tell them, hey, these keywords are related. Be careful about that, because sometimes they're not. So make sure that if you think two keywords are related, you can check like in Ahrefs and see if same pages are ranking for both keywords. That's a pretty good indicator that they're related. That's my only caution on that one. Other than that, just pick one of the head terms that you want to go for and just follow Ted's advice there.
And I'm telling you, minimum viable SEO. You're going to get great returns and minimum work doing it that way. The other thing, let's see, another question here. This is a good one. It's from Tanya. The 30 kilobyte cliff for keyword density, how does it work? Does it mean that non-minified HTML code is at a disadvantage? Well, here's the thing. So you got to take this factor with a grain of salt. Does it test out as being real? Yes, but only in the simple indexing context. It has never been tested in rendered indexing. So in that fast pass where Google is ranking your page overnight, it does have a benefit. that benefit might go away once Google fully renders the page and recalibrates your ranking. So we don't know because it hasn't been tested fully. We just know that in this early stage of indexing, there's this benefit to having keyword density at the top. So how does it work? You can get a text editor that will tell you, usually in the status bar at the bottom, there'll be a little bar at the bottom. As you select text across your text editor, it'll tell you how many characters you have selected. And so if your text editor has a feature like that, you can take and view your source and select from the top until you get to 30,000 and see, do you have any content in there that's optimized for SEO? And if the answer is no, if you only got, 8% into your style sheets, then you're not going to have that advantage. You can take your inline styles and put them in includes. And I don't know why people don't do that. Well, yeah, I do know why they do it. It's because their themes are built that way so that the first impression has good page load times. The problem is first impression isn't how most websites traffic behaves. Most people have people browsing their page and looking at different pages. And so impressions 2+, those performance metrics are actually more important than the first impression page load times. So when you take those inline scripts and styles and break them out into include files, web browsers can cache them so they're not being requested and transmitted with every page view. But when they're inline in the viewable source, every request is going to send it again, send it again, send it again. And it's a huge amount of text. So when you inline scripts, you defeat the web browser's ability to be efficient and fast. But your first impression is faster. So, if you want to play this game, put those scripts and styles in include files and improve the benchmarks for impressions 2 and after. And then it's easier to play the game of keyword density in the first 30 kilobytes. Now, should you do it? Probably not. The reason I'm going to say probably not is even though it works in SEO, not everything that works in SEO is worth doing. And so the advantage you get from the top 30 kilobytes keyword density, let's call it anecdotally 3% advantage over the next guy. It's not a big enough boost to be worth a big project. So if you have that advantage, or if you're building a new website, pick a theme that's minimal, and then you get that bonus 3% based on a good theme choice. That makes a lot of sense because you're not investing a lot of time in development work and ongoing maintenance. So great usage of employing it in a theme choice. Probably less ROI coming from it if you're going to try to fix your website for 3%. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think Carolyn is doing some analogous testing, not the exact rendered thing, and she's doing some things with page size. And when that testing is done, we can see if we can put her in a headlock and convince her to come on the show and share her findings.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, any thoughts initially? You want to put a theory out before you get your data?
No, but I will say one of the things I'm waiting for is, does it ever get through the second pass? And so far, and I guess we're coming on now close to 2 weeks-ish, week and a half. And no signs of that.
For rendered indexing?
Yes.
Yeah, I did notice that there was some talk about a update happening. I never know if it's real or not because it seems like an update is brewing, announcement is like permanently pinned at the top of everywhere.
Yeah, anytime
Yeah.
something weird goes on with my website, there's an update brewing. That's the hypothesis.
Yeah.
Um,
See that.
so
But
Ted, can you do a show on how to do a small test from A to Z? Yeah, that might be a good idea in the coming weeks, and I'll have some recent tests to work with on that because I am retesting Google Time Exploit, and so those would be fun ones to do an update on. Yeah, possibly. I like that idea. Indexing question. Using some hacks and indexing API was using some hacks and indexing API was a great hack to index these large sites. 30K pages per day per site. That's pretty good, actually. But that stopped working last month. Well, it comes and goes. So for one, it might not be your fault or your site's fault. It might be Google has a big deployment, and so they slow down these subsystems, and now you're at the mercy of Google turning them back on or speeding them back up. And when Google does that, what you'll tend to see in Search Console is the reason things aren't getting indexed will skyrocket for this label called Google Systems. And Carolyn has pointed this out in the past, and that's kind of Google's way of saying it's our fault. And the thing about those Google Systems ones is that they will not fix themselves. It's not like Google will come back online and go back and make those right. Those pages are pretty much dead to Google indexing until you request indexing on them again after Google's issue has been fixed. And so I would keep an eye for the Google Systems label and reasons why things aren't being indexed. And if that's skyrocketing, put on the brakes because Google's doing something. What do you think, Carolyn?
Well, I can pretty much date when the API stopped behaving like it did before. It was December 12th. It has not behaved the same since. And believe me, I'm looking for it.
Mhm.
So it's very, very different at this point. And I am seeing a difference between, as I shared before, between sites that have a designated, like my understanding of it is shifting, that it's the preparation of your data in your Search Console, that if it says primary desktop crawler compiled all of that information, I am seeing signs where new content is being treated differently by those particular designations. So we if you have a smartphone or mobile compiled, your data is compiled by the mobile bots, you can get new content indexed within 48 hours. So I'm unfortunately down in the weeds on the desktop crawler. So that's what I got for you.
Yeah, and if Clint were here, he'd be telling you to make sure that you have your mobile friendliness dialed in, because it's really hard to get indexed without that set up correctly. And I was fighting that earlier this year because Google had me perma stuck and not mobile friendly. And it was really annoying because I basically had nothing but large font text and nothing else. And so it was a weird bug. But let's see, we're almost out of time here. So we'll do a couple more and then we'll have to save the rest for next time. So does having keywords in a GMB review impact ranking? The most recent research I've seen suggested that having a relevant GMB review kept the GMB review appearing longer and higher. but I don't know of research on that impacting the local ranking. Does it? It might. I just haven't seen research on it. The only research I've seen in, say, the past 2-3 months was the relevant reviews impacting, we'll call it the hang time of the review. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I haven't seen any. There's a lot of theories on this. There's practically zero tested data. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence in both directions. So it's hard to know. But one of the things that I'd be cautious of is, here you said, what's the impact on ranking? Well, you're talking organic or maps, because both of those things can be affected by keyword mentions in a variety of places. So just, and I'm assuming you're talking local. I would think, this is strictly a guess, I would think that yes, the presence of it would help it rank a little bit higher for that specific one, because Google likes to show you, hey, here's something that's very relevant for that. One of the things that I see a lot of times, in my particular case, my wife and I are vegan. So when we go new places, we look for vegan restaurants, and you start to see these things. And a lot of times what you'll see in the snippet is not many vegan options, but it ranks near the top because it mentions vegan, which is helpful, but it's not, exactly the way you'd hope the algorithm would work. So I would think that the mention would help it rank specifically for those keywords, but overall beyond that, I have no idea.
So this will be our last one today. Sorry for the other questions, just running out of time. But this is a great one to end on. Some are saying that in the future, the SERP will be replaced by AI chat. 2 questions. How is Google going to monetize that? And will AI ever be accurate enough to be trustworthy? So the first one I already know. How is Google and everyone else going to monetize it? They're going to create an ad platform. And instead of pay per click, you're going to pay per prompt. And so you're going to bid on your ad appearing next to the article that's being written. So right next to it, bing, an ad. Somebody's going to bid on your prompt. And they're going to say, I'm going to bid $1.17 to show my ad to people writing SEO content prompts to talk about my SEO tool. And so you're going to pay per prompt to get an ad next to that AI answer. So that's totally where it's going to go. And then there's probably going to be a secondary market that when somebody creates an AI list of, say, a tool roundup. So write an article on the top 20 best SEO tools. Somebody might be able to pay a premium to get a sponsored mention in the list. So you'll get your article with your list, and one of them will be labeled sponsored. So those are kind of the 2 dimensions. Either your ad's going to appear next to it, or you're going to have a sponsored mention within the text that's created. What do you think, Lee, on the monetization?
Yeah, the monetization, I think you're right. I don't think there's always going to be everywhere. There's always going to be a chance to insert and get paid for a click, even from a chat type, answer. What is the best SEO software? The best SEO software out there is Quora with a hyperlink on it, and you click on that, and Ted has to pay $1.25 or whatever to the search engine. But I don't think that the chat is going to replace the search engine entirely, because AI systems are dependent on websites for their training sets. And ultimately, especially for new things, keeping up to date with what's going on, they need those fresh training sets. So if I'm not getting traffic to my site because the SERP has changed and maybe my site's not appearing, but some sort of chatbot is utilizing my information, I will block those chatbots from, or poison. There's also, you can poison the content so that it's inaccurate. I don't think that they can fully get away from presentation of the SERP, but it might be that the sort of the featured snippet at the top is replaced by a chat interface that can do certain things that, you know, augment the search. I don't think it's possible to do that because, you know, again, what's if the chat replaces the SERP, what incentive do I have as a content publisher to publish any of my content or make it available to these other bots to crawl and usurp my thoughts as their own?
Yep. And I do believe that in the future, you want to build trusted sources. So if you want to control a keyword space, then being a trusted source that the AI would quote from about that keyword space gives you a lot of power. So if you have, the 20 top blogs for SEO tool reviews, and they all agree on what the top 20 tools are, that's going to be a powerful source that's probably going to sway AI and how it presents SEO tools. So, probably the smart players now realize they need to be a trusted authority on their most important keyword area. Will it ever be accurate enough to be trustworthy? Well, in many ways, it already is. So if you need to know how to do a 3-column layout in CSS, I mean, it's pretty trustworthy. It works. The problem with it is that it's biased. Like the training set was slanted heavily white hat, so it spins a lot of white hat misinformation. And so the same way you have to filter the media, you're going to have to filter, Chat GPT, because the same biases are built in. But can it be trustworthy for factual things? Can it be trustworthy for a list of ideas on, types of cookies to make? I think it can be useful in those ways, and you can trust it to give you a good list of recommendations of different types of popular cookies. I think it's totally not going to mislead you on that. But then again, if you ask it, does keyword density help rank pages, it's going to toe the white hat line. What do you think, Lee?
Well, I mean, that's where the majority of the training set is. And, I would go back to, if they're pulling stuff that's just generally off the internet anyway, you look at any SERP, how trustworthy is any particular SERP? I can have, a best SEO software review up there, and I can talk about how I use Quora for my on page, determining the types of scheme I need to use, and I use it for optimizing my images. And they're like, Ted, Quora optimizes images? It's like, no, but it's in my particular thing. So an AI trained on that might pull that into a description of Quora. Did I mean to make the mistake? The AI is never going to be a fact checker, an arbiter of truth. It's going to be just as good as the underlying training set that's there. And training sets have mistakes, so.
And it's largely going to be based on consensus. So the things that are commonly agreed upon in its training set are going to be the things it probably recommends the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This was a fun show. We will see you again next week. So take care, everyone. Great questions. And I'm sorry.